Also, the team, I mean, didn't treat Lando fairly there because his car broke down. And they didn't ask Oscar to stop the car as well, just to keep things fair. So then you go to the next race, and then you go to Monza. And what if the mechanic that was putting that tire onto Lando's car is actually Oscar Piastri's lead mechanic and best friend? Um, it's all these things you have to consider, and so there's no right or wrong. A lot of people will not like it. A lot of people will think it makes sense. I was happy they did that because I am, with my hat that I have on, is I want a super exciting Formula One championship until the very end. So I was happy that in that case, Lando had the opportunity to get the deserved points since he personally did a better job than Oscar in the Monza weekend. So I thought it was good that they did that, but it's impossible. There's no right or wrong. It looked fair from the outside, of course, because it's not fair to Lando. He did everything amazingly, and then the team messes up his pit stop. But it's a hard one because if you're Oscar, it will drive you nuts.
Yeah.
Because it's never been done before, and until then, I think internally, pit stop speed is part of racing. Yeah, if one guy's pit stop is a second slower and that results in a win, that's always going to be part of racing historically. That's always how it's been. So of course in Oscar's view, you would not like it very much, but he wasn't given a choice. Once the team calls him out, he's obliged to let him pass. He can't then go against his entire team because that will look horrible and cause a disaster for him.
Oh, I'm going to come back onto what you might or might not have done in 2016 in a moment. But let me give you the result of a poll that we've been running, by the way. Yes, we run polls and we run them across all of our channels. So on YouTube, this was a question: was it fair for McLaren to ask Oscar to let Lando pass after the slow pit stop? YouTube 41% yes, 59% no. On X 32.7% yes, 67.3% no. And Instagram 41 yes, 59% no. So most people are in Oscar's favor. It's just racing. Do you think, therefore, was some of that decision, and we don't know what Papaya rules say. We don't know if this is the grey areas of what's been written down, what's been agreed upon, or whatever. But do you think that the decision might have been led, as Nico was alluding to, a little bit out of guilt from last week and what happened to Lando, Crofty?
I think McLaren had a predetermined agreement between themselves and the drivers going into the race, and it seems to me that they were determined to stick to that agreement. During the race, Lando was contacted on the radio to say, look, we're going to pit Oscar. We think we need to pit Oscar first. Are you happy with that? And he was. He was told there was no threat of the undercut, so his mind was put at ease. If McLaren were then not to swap the positions around, that to me would lead to a feeling of mistrust, I think, from Lando towards his team, because they would have gone against what they'd already told him by that stage. So McLaren were obliged to swap the positions around, because it's not just about what happens in the moment. And I'm sure, Nico, you remember this from 2016. It's what happens going forward as well. You want the drivers to go away from the racetrack happy that all things are equal, and come back to a racetrack happy that all things are equal. And look, Lando qualified ahead of Oscar, did a better job on the Saturday, spent 48 laps ahead of his teammate, pulled out a 6-second gap to his teammate, let his teammate pit first at the risk of that undercut, which he was told wasn't going to happen, suffered a slow stop, which was not his fault whatsoever, and therefore lost position. So, you're not going to trust the team that much if you're Lando Norris, if the positions aren't swapped around and you haven't earned that second place, which was rightfully yours, because up until the stage of the slow stop, you
Formula One records. Most wins, poles, and championships. Check out these Formula One records, including most driver and constructor Grand Prix wins, world championships, and pole positions. Motorsport is all about pushing yourself and your car to the absolute limit. Over the decades, Formula One records have tumbled as drivers have pushed harder, engines have become more powerful, and the cars, inevitably, faster. Achievement in F1 is spread between constructors and drivers. Over decades in the sport, teams like Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams have broken Formula One records with consistently quick cars and the fastest drivers. Here, you will find the Formula One records for most championships, race wins, pole positions, race entries for both teams and individuals. If you want to know more about the youngest drivers to win championships, races, points, and podiums, read our article here. Upon winning the 2024 season, Max Verstappen breaks into the top four, going level with Vettel and Prost. Lewis Hamilton remains atop the record table alongside Michael Schumacher with 7 titles apiece. The German was dominant at the turn of the century, winning 5 titles on the bounce with Ferrari. These were in addition to his double world championships with Benetton in the 90s. It was a record that looked unassailable. However, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes' dominance in the hybrid era turned the motorsport world on its head. Hamilton replaced Schumacher at Mercedes after the German's retirement at the end of 2012. Since then, Hamilton won 6 world titles between 2014 and 2020. Those 6 titles, along with his maiden championship in his second season with McLaren, make him the joint most successful driver ever. Juan Manuel Fangio's record of 5 titles in the 1950s stood the test of time. The first great driver of the Formula One era, he finished first or second in the championship in the first 7 seasons he entered. His record stood until 2003 when Schumacher clinched his 6th title. Alain Prost's battles with Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, and Nelson Piquet earned him 4 titles. As did Sebastian Vettel's absolute dominance with Red Bull in the early 2010s. As the longest-serving team in Formula One, it's no surprise to see Ferrari sitting atop the Constructors' Championship table. Omnipresent in Formula One since its first season in 1950, the Scuderia has become a symbol for the sport. But it's one thing to turn up to every race, it's another to win them. For decades, the Scarlet-Red Ferrari has been at the front of the grid, and it has won the Constructors' title 16 times, along with producing the Drivers' Champion on 15 occasions. Its world champions include Alberto Ascari, Juan Manuel Fangio, Mike Hawthorne, Phil Hill, Niki Lauda, Michael Schumacher, and most recently, Kimi Räikkönen. McLaren snatched their constructors' title since 1998 when Lando Norris won the 2024 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in December. That sees them go level in second alongside Williams, but there is still a gulf between first and second in this list. Williams has been present in Formula One since 1977 and took its 9 titles throughout the 80s and 90s. Keke Rosberg, Alain Prost, and Damon Hill are among some of its driver champions. When he first stepped into a Formula One car, the paddock knew this guy was special. But when Lewis Hamilton took his first victory in Canada in 2007, no one expected what would follow. Lewis Hamilton stormed to a record 105 victories. Red Bull's Flying Dutchman may have stemmed the flow of victories, but Hamilton has demonstrated in 2024 that he still has what it takes to reach the top step. Max Verstappen's record-breaking season in 2023 knocked Ayrton Senna off the 5th and Alain Prost off 4th, and, in the last race of the season, Sebastian Vettel off 3rd. Not a bad season for the 26-year-old driver. Schumacher's 91 wins came mostly with Ferrari, including a near-perfect year in 2002. He took 11 victories, 5 second-place finished and a single third place. Sebastian Vettel's record with Red Bull, and his title pushes with Ferrari, earn him the 4th spot. As you might expect, the teams with the most championships also make up the teams with the most victories. Ferrari remains way out in front and is the only constructor to take more than 200 race victories. However, the last few years have seen Red Bull enjoy a period of absolute domination. The Austrian team broke the record for consecutive Formula One race victories, taking their tally to 15 in a row. The record was previously 11 and held by McLaren, which had stood since 1988. In terms of pole positions, there's a clear winner. Lewis Hamilton is the first driver to reach triple-digit pole positions.